lot of meat packing.
That could be New York. That could possibly
It's
be.
somewhere in the middle of America, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, he's a local musician. He's staying out there. I heard he was working
Cyrus
on
is
some
laughing
stuff.
at us because
Right.
we're just doing a terrible job at
Yeah.
geography right now.
Cyrus is like Google meat packing states. That just sounds all kinds of wrong, by the way. All right. I'm going to hand this over to Jason real quick. Cyrus Luhr of Guam Animals in Need. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Solis.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Cyrus, good morning, my friend. Man, we have been waiting to talk to you because this video, shall we say, I'm sure you and your colleagues up at Gain have seen this thing like a cajillion times and everything like that. Not exactly like shocking to some people. It's definitely interesting. Definitely worth a replay and probably cause for concern, no doubt. What's your read on just this video of these dogs congregating? Other people are saying like they're dogs that are now herding.
Well, we're really glad that this video is circulating and that people that it was recorded and that it's being shared, because this really highlights the problem that we have been seeing for years now. This is the problem that the mayors are contending with. And this is what that they're talking about when they're coming forward and saying that they really need more resources to be able to tackle this problem. We have at GAIN, at the shelter, we're very familiar with these types of growth in population, and over the years we've just seen it continue. We know that the population was about of total dogs in Guam was about 60,000 in 2014. The stray population was about 24,500. A military veterinarian specializing in population studies has said that that is increasing 3% every year. And so what we see in that video is going to be more and more common moving forward. And so it is a very concerning thing. It is something that we find just troublesome. And I want to make it clear that we don't fault individuals in this. We don't fault the animals either. It's not the animals' fault that they are just naturally breeding. This is what they do. And we're not faulting people who go out there and trying to help the animals or not, because at the end of the day, this is a symptom of a larger problem. And that larger problem is the lack of any sort of widespread population control measure. The only way to control a stray animal population is neutering. Numerous studies have been done on killing animals. What happens if we just go in there and try to kill them all? It creates a vacuum effect. And what happens when you kill them and create that vacuum effect, you actually increase the number of animals. It's very counterintuitive, but when you have a vacuum, you no longer have adult animals consuming those resources, but you can't eliminate 100% of the strays on Guam. And so when you had an adult animal consuming the resources in a region and all of a sudden you remove them, then you have a vacuum, and that vacuum is filled up with 4 or 5 puppies. So instead of one adult dog, you now have multiple puppies consuming those resources because there's less competition for those resources. And so the vacuum effect is real. And so that's why we can't kill our way out of this problem. We have to follow the same tested and effective plan that many countries or in jurisdictions around the world have implemented, which is just spaying and neutering. If we can hit 75% spay-neutered of owned and unowned animals, because we know owned animals also breed, and some of those end up being strays, then we can solve this problem. But ultimately, it needs to be done on the scale of government. No single group of, small group of people, clubs, groups, even GAIN, is going to be able to solve this on our own. This needs a government level intervention, and that's what we're advocating for.
Because to be able to facilitate that type of, let's call it a procedure, or like that type of operation at the scale we need to, it costs a lot of money. You obviously have to have like specialists that are properly trained in administering the kind of shot that you will need. You also need people that are trained in handling the dogs. I mean, who hasn't been in the care of a dog here at some point in your life? But for that kind of operation, you want people who are familiar with this kind of thing, and that kind of thing is expensive.
It is, but it's also not something that's impossible.
Mhm.
This is a we have been piloting this sort of intervention, this sort of solution at Gain for a few years now, because we recognize that this problem needs a solution, and we want to be to spearhead that.
Mhm.
So we have built we've retrofitted one of our buildings on site to be a spay neuter clinic for about. With the help of Humane Society International, we were able to have a veterinarian at the shelter. We were doing low-cost spay neuters for the community. As I'm sure you remember, we even did a pop-up clinic in Ordot Pago with the mayor there. It was excellent. But ultimately, those are pilot level interventions. We were able to do almost 3,000 surgeries in that way. But at this stage, we've proven that there's community demand. We've proven that the community is educated and wants to get these procedures done. We literally can't do it through private enterprise. If we were to maximize the amount of surgeries possible with all the clinics on Guam, we would not be able to tackle this problem. So we do need to hire a government veterinarian who specializes just in spays and neuters. They can use the facility at Gain. We can have staff assist them, and we can start making a huge dent in this problem and solve it that way. So the solution is there. This is nice, because this isn't a situation where we have to figure out how to solve this. We know what the solution is. We've tested it out on a pilot level. All we need now is government level funding to be able to implement this and solve it. And we think that we can do it for $400,000 a year, which, if you think about it, is quite small compared to some of the other expenditures that we see in GovGuam.
And we're way past the point of this being like a theoretical problem, because now you say there is evidence to suggest that, if the population is growing at 3% per year, and it's this, and I guess as Guamanians, we are now experienced with the fact that a system like a hospital or an education system or a government can be overwhelmed from what we learned with the coronavirus experience. Our ability to actually take care of these, like you said, like at these small levels. By the way, and most of these organizations like Gain are not profit. They have become, like, it has surpassed their point. We're way past the tipping point at this point. So like you said, we need big government to kind of like step in and help out.
Absolutely. And this isn't an issue. This isn't a matter of delaying cost, because I understand when you have to weigh different costs and you're a government and you're trying to figure out where to allocate resources. Sometimes you might want to push a certain cost off a year if you can, or 2 years if you can. The problem with this is that every year, push off the cost, it increases the cost because the problem grows. Right. So if we're growing the population 3% every year, the cost to solve this increases every year.
It's compounding interest, basically.
Exactly. One of the most powerful forces in the universe. And so if we just push this off 5 more years, the cost will be even higher. The demand and outrage from the public will be even higher. And then, what are we going to do then? Pretend that we didn't know this was a problem? We know this is a problem. We know what the solution is, and we know that we have the finances to solve it.
Okay, now when you say government, like I'm going to hold your feet to the fire here, because I know you're a real stand-up guy, but when you say we want to hold government accountable, do you even see yourself maybe, obviously you want to go to GovGuam and work with the senators, work with the mayors, possibly see if there's an appropriation that could be made. Hopefully that thing would be able to be sustained year to year. Are you considering maybe going straight to Uncle Sam and just saying, are there grants the island could qualify for, things like that?
We have excellent partners at the Department of Ag. The director, deputy director there are top notch. They've been really helping us out. And we have applied for some pretty large grants with the Department of Interior. So we are hopeful that we can get some funding through that, but it's not going to be enough to solve it. And Department of Interior is not going to give us indefinite funds. And to permanently solve this problem, we're going to permanently need a veterinarian on staff so that once we hit that 75%, we maintain it. And so we do, without a doubt, we need local commitment and contributions to this, but we are certainly looking and have applied for DOI grants, and we're just waiting to see what the word is on those.
Okay, so let's go even a higher level. So like there's GovGuam, there's, like I said, the federal Uncle Sam. Now let me ask you to ask Santa Claus, right? If you were gonna have your optimal solution and have everything best possible ask, and you got everything you asked for. Structure a program for us, if you could, Cyrus, about like how this would work, and what would make a sustainable type of infrastructure going forward.
Well, in an ideal situation, the way that we envision sort of like a 10-year campaign in terms of what the dream for Guam would be, increasing the capacity at the animal shelter. We estimate that would cost about $200,000 to double the capacity at the shelter. We would love to see a partnership with the Department of Corrections so that we could have a secondary location that's a partner with DOC where mayors can drop off animals there. They could be, so, because we know that the southern part of the island is underserved, and then they could, rehabilitate the animals there, prison dog programs. So we've had interest in the past with the Department of Corrections, but of course we've had issues with DOC protocols over the last few years. That's been a little bit held up. And ultimately, those are sort of like the multi-pronged efforts, but the big one, it would be permanent government spay-neuter services targeting low income, but really open to everyone. And the way we envision that is that we would have a full-time veterinarian at GAIN doing the procedures, and that we would be we would also be setting up pop-up clinics in the different villages, maybe for 2 weeks at a time, every couple of months. We've already tried it with worked phenomenally well. We had a huge turnout. And so we would do that and rotate around from village to village and just slowly sort of solve the problem that way. We would also bring in visiting veterinarians, which is another model that we have already done at GAIN, and it's worked great. There's a lot of American veterinarians who live in Japan. Some of them live in the States, and they want to come out to Guam and help out and volunteer their services. And so we do that. And ultimately, the full-time veterinarian, visiting veterinarians, the expansion at the shelter, all together would be a comprehensive solution to this problem. We estimate that would be about $800,000 a year to be able to accomplish all of that. And again, in the grand scheme of things, we know that the impact to tourism probably exceeds that. There have been studies done in Puerto Rico where they estimate that their stray dog problem hurts tourism to the cost of $5 to $12 million a year. Granted, we're not as large as Puerto Rico, but still, American Samoa did Samoa, formerly Western Samoa, did a study as well, and they estimated that their tourism was impacted to the tune of about $1 to $2 million a year because of the stray dog problem. Because people come, they're bothered by what they see, they don't want to come back. And they tell people as well that of what they saw. We know for a fact that the stray dog problem is hurting tourism in Guam. We've had Japanese and Korean tourists call the animal shelter because they were disturbed by something that they saw. They're not going home and telling people that they had a great time in Guam. They're going home and saying, I rented a car to pick up this starving dog and take it up to this shelter. I can't believe what I saw. And so if we're willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on different things that just sort of make the island look good and try to attract tourism and such, why would we not invest in a stray dog problem that we know hurts tourism, that we know if rabies was reintroduced to Guam would really hurt tourism, really hurt public health outcomes. And it's simply a growing problem that from mayors to community members, it is something that's consistently front page news.
I was just about to say, because I'm glad you brought up the rabies problem, because the territorial epidemiologist, Dr. Ann Pobutsky, mentioned that several weeks ago, and she said, the fact that rabies was a concern for Guam, but then it's more or less been eradicated. Are you seeing any indication of these congregations of dogs, being somewhat of a health hazard, or like if one of them becomes ill, do they spread it that much quicker because they're all hanging out together?
Well, yes, it's a risk. Thankfully, we haven't seen anything spreading right now, but it's of course a vector of potential public health, risk. There were 2 cases of Lyme disease in Guam over the last 2 years. It's believed that it was contracted from off island, but of course, if that was to establish in Guam, that would be very concerning. Rabies was introduced to Guam in 1967. It was eradicated through widespread poisoning and killing of all animals roaming on Guam. But if it were to be reintroduced to Guam today, it would be pretty near impossible to eradicate it. And imagine the impact to not only public health, to lives, but also to tourism if we're the island in the Pacific that has a new unchecked rabies outbreak. Bali was rabies free up until 2009. Rabies was came in on a boat with believed to be just a dog that was unchecked, and 125 people died within the next year and a half. Rabies is the deadliest virus known to man. It has a 100% kill rate once you start showing symptoms. We in the U.S. think rabies is sort of this humorous, lighthearted disease that that can be protected against, and you can get a shot. But 55,000 people die from rabies a year.
I don't think there's anything
world.
humorous about rabies, man. Just watch the movie Cujo,
Yeah,
and that'll scare you away from that.
Zombies.
It is,
Yeah.
and we know that there are animals being brought into Guam unchecked. It's not the fault of Customs and Quarantine. It's simply that it's such a huge problem that animals are just sneaking through, sometimes just accidentally. They're on fishing boats coming from overseas and such, and they're just being brought into the island. So it's a matter of when, not if, that a concerning disease will be reintroduced to Guam, such as rabies. And when that happens, we need to be ready. And the best thing to do is start investing now in reducing the population rather than waiting until something horrible happens and then we're in a different type of quarantine.
Okay, I'm enjoying what I'm hearing. I'm feeling like I'm very, very educated on this. You've laid out what the problem is clearly, how much you're asking for, maybe about 800,000 a year or so, and everything like that. But I'm no policymaker. I wish I could cut you a check for 800 grand. I cannot.
I would accept it.
Yeah. So where do you and the people who love animals and the people who want to take leadership positions in this space, where do you now go? And have you already begun to have those kind of conversations with the people that are in charge of legislation?
We have been in these discussions, and we have been. We are seeing things change. I think maybe 5 years ago, it was very difficult to sort of prioritize this issue with policymakers and the public. I think over the last 5 years, with the growing number of strays, with the increased attention that the news has brought to this problem, we are starting to see people realize that not only is this a growing problem, but that this is something that needs to be tackled and needs to be tackled now. So when people want to step up and be able to contribute or advocate for change, I cannot overemphasize how important it is to reach out to your elected representatives and tell them that this is important to you. A single phone call can persuade a senator, can persuade the governor that this is an important matter. And I worked in the legislature for many years, and I can tell you that very few people actually call when they're upset about something. And so when you get 5, 10 people calling about an issue over a couple of weeks, that's enough attention to make a senator understand that a problem is that a community is really upset about a problem. Don't underestimate the power of your voice to reach out and bring attention to a cause, to a policymaker. If you are upset by this condition of animal welfare on Guam, if you're worried about the public health impacts or the tourism impacts of a growing stray dog problem, reach out to the senators that you feel most comfortable talking to. If you don't know any of them, call all of them. I mean, just let and you won't necessarily be able to get a sit-down meeting with all of them, but simply calling and telling them telling whoever answers the phone that please take a note, let your elected representative know that stray animals is a problem for you, that you want to see increased attention or funding for this problem. I guarantee you that after a few phone calls like that, this will prioritize the problem for policymakers. And I want to make very clear, I'm not faulting any single senator or any single administration. This is a problem that's been growing for decades. And we are thankful that at this stage, we're starting to see a lot of attention being brought by policymakers. But if we can continue to advocate for this problem, we really are hopeful that with this new budget cycle, we'll be able to see a significant improvement in terms of funding for animal control, animal welfare, and this problem overall.
Well, Chris, sounds like we got a plan.
Yeah.
All we got to do now is execute it, and that of course is always going to be the hardest part.
I mean, there's $600 million that's sitting in the bank. I don't know if you guys get any of that, Cyrus.
Well, I'll be happy to accept it if it does come out.
Maybe you need to get all these wonderful pets that you have up at the shelter and you just do a march on Adelup.
It'd be the most adorable march ever.
I'm telling you, there's no gathering limit for dogs and cats. Cyrus, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Go ahead, yeah.
No, I mean, I was just going to reiterate that if this is an important issue to you, if you're watching this and you're just sort of fed up with the stray problems, don't yell at your mayor. They're doing the best that they can with the limited resources that they have. Don't yell at animal control because they are very limited as well. They're wonderful advocates. We work closely with both of them. Ultimately, reach out to the policymakers. The legislature is putting together the budget for the upcoming year. Call the senators you know. If you don't know them, pull up the website for the legislature and dial a few numbers and just let the people know. Let your elected representative know what issues are important to you, and that $800,000 to solve this problem is very small when you consider the impact, the negative impact this has on public health, on tourism, and on animal welfare.
All right. Is there any particular senator that you know of, just off the top of your head, that may be more
pet friendly,
aware of the issue, sympathetic to the issue, like more proactive, and is involved with with the care of animals in her?
The nice thing about working in the animal welfare field is that there's no party lines here. We have wonderful supporters that are both Republicans and Democrats, and so we haven't had negative pushback. We know that Clint Rigel has been a big advocate. We know that Senator Joanne Brown has written legislation in the past that has really improved animal welfare for Guam. So we do, of course, Senator Perez as well. So really, it's not an issue of necessarily finding the strongest advocate, but just making sure that this is a high priority for all 15 senators. So reach out to whichever senator is the ones that you think you're most comfortable reaching out to, and just let them know that this is important.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
Looks like we got some phone calls to make, guys.
Thank you, Cyrus.
Thank you.
Cyrus, have a good day, man. Keep up the fight, man.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Right
All
on.
right. Have
There
a
you
good
go.
one.
Cyrus Luhr, the Guam Animals in Need nonprofit. 9:20. We'll take a quick break and come back with more of the link next. Good morning.
Do you feel like you're missing out on something? Make life more